Hello, welcome to the Provocative Hypnosis vlog. This is Jürgen Rasmussen speaking. Today's topic is bound to be very controversial and probably will not be appreciated by many of my colleagues in the hypnosis world. I'd like to start off. By the way, this is about the relationship between being a good hypnotist and being a good liar, and also being a good hypnotic subject and being really great at self-deception. There is a relationship here that very few people, if any, seem to be talking about. So I'd like to start off with a definition of the hypnotic process that you can bet your bottom dollar that no hypnotist has ever used or presented to a client. It comes from the very honest psychiatrist. Imagine that, a very honest psychiatrist by the name of Thomas Szasz, who's actually one of my favorite thinkers and a great influence on how I think as well. And he said hypnosis is two people lying to each other, each pretending to believe both his own lies and his partner's lies. See, I told you, no one ever uses this definition. Now, I don't think Thomas Szasz really knew much about hypnosis. He was really speaking about a topic that he didn't have much knowledge about, but there is a glimmer of truth to this. There is a glimmer of truth to this. So let's look at the great hypnotic subject. I really like an old definition that Jay Haley used to use, and he said that in the old Palo Alto mental research group, they were studying paradox, and they discovered that the first paradox that they really discovered and worked on was hypnosis, in that you could define hypnosis as an activity of directing another person to behave spontaneously, which is a paradox. So, for example, the hypnotist might say to his client or subject on stage or whatever it might be that in a few seconds that right arm will begin to lift, for example. Now, this is a paradoxical instruction because he's simultaneously saying, I want you to lift your arm, but I don't want you to do it. Now, one way out of this paradox, or solving this paradox, is to lift the arm, and simultaneously forget that you're doing it. And this is what happens in hypnosis to a large extent. People are using their automatic imagination. They're thinking, in a sense, and forgetting that they're thinking. So the hypnotist is guiding the other person's automatic imagination. The subject is imagining alongside the hypnotist's instructions, but then he forgets that he's doing it, which gives rise to the experience of the hand lifting involuntarily. It's lifting, but I'm not the one doing it. Hence, it gives rise to the illusion that the hypnotist is doing it to him. So this is the sense in which a great hypnotic subject is really great at self-deception. See, they're really generating the experience internally, and they're forgetting that they're doing it, and that gives the rise to the experience of it just happening by itself, and it also gives rise to the subjective experience that the hypnotist is the cause or the source of my experience. So how is a great hypnotist a great liar? Well, think about it this way. If you're doing If you, for example, Google Change Phenomena Conference 2010 and my name, you will see a clip where I evoke positive and negative hallucinations on stage with a volunteer who was a psychiatrist. Now, the phenomena were real, but this is a context where I risked being exposed as a liar. I essentially claimed to know what his experience would be. And I did so with a completely straight face. Now, given the context and his skills at automatic imagination, absorption, dissociation, and his level of suggestibility, it turned into a great show. It turned into him having the hallucinations and having them in a way that felt completely non-voluntary. But I risked being exposed as a liar, meaning, had I claimed to know what his experience would be, and he hadn't generated that experience, I would have been a liar on stage in front of a bunch of people and my subject. So, and the same thing goes even in your office. If you're going to suggest that, when I count from 3 down to 1, your feet will be so heavy that the more you try to lift them, the more you will find that they stick. If you make this claim congruently to a client, you are claiming to know what the client's experience will be. And every time you do it, you risk being exposed as a liar. Now, of course, pretty much any sane hypnotist will have some way of calibrating the person's nonverbal responses. And the name of the game is plausibility. Based upon how the person's already responding, does it seem plausible that he will be able to generate or want to generate this particular suggestion? But you still risk being exposed as a liar. So the simultaneous ability to deliver a claim like that, and many of the claims that we hypnotists make, in terms of deep trance identification, in terms of positive and negative hallucinations, in terms of people being unable to say their names, whether we do this in a stage context or a street context or in an office in a therapeutic or coaching context, we are making claims that sound completely outrageous, and we're doing it with a straight face, and we risk being exposed as a liar. Now, so there are a couple of abilities here that are important. Of course, some people might have a poor sense of reality testing and be so deluded that they have no idea that they're essentially lying in a sense. And those might be the best liars of all, Now, for the rest of us, you need to have, if you're going to do direct suggestion hypnosis, and if you're going to attempt to directly evoke hypnotic phenomena in a way where it might be obvious that you haven't quite succeeded with the client in evoking it, you have to have the ability to be comfortable being exposed as a liar and know how to deal with it. And you also have to be comfortable making claims, knowing what the other person's subjective experience will be, uh, while simultaneously knowing that you don't really know. So one thing that I've noticed in seminars when teaching people affect bridge regression work, teaching people rapid inductions, instant inductions, maneuvers where you directly go for it and you get immediate feedback about whether what you're doing together is working or not, is that a lot of people won't pull the trigger. When they ask for or attempt to evoke the hypnotic phenomena, they'll hesitate, they'll doubt, they begin to babble and get really wordy and throw in a lot of fat. essentially because they're uncomfortable making the claim with a straight face, and they're uncomfortable being exposed. So to get over this, um, one thing you can do is to do ethical lies in the real world, meaning pranks. Just go out there and deliver a bold-faced lie and do it with a straight face and have the willingness, practice the willingness of, being exposed. So there has to be some risk of being exposed. The more you develop this ability, the more convincing you'll have the skill of being. So I'll give you a couple of funny examples from my own life of what I think were ethical lies, in a sense. I had done a 4-day seminar in the UK, and I was flying back to Oslo, Norway, and the plane went from London to Amsterdam to Norway. And this was during Easter time, and I was tired from teaching for 4 days. I really wanted to go home, and the airline was acting like an asshole. They had overbooked the flight. So I had a valid ticket. I had paid for it, but they're speculating in overbooking the flight. And my plane from London to Amsterdam was late and delayed, and I asked the purser, and he said, you know what, you're just going to have to check into a hotel in Amsterdam for the night. Tomorrow you'll get flown back to Oslo. Expenses covered. It's not an issue. And I thought to myself, nah, I want to go home today. How do I deal with this? So I rushed to the gate, and I'd already given myself the question, how do I deal with this? So I had some trust that when the context arrived, some solution would appear. And what I noticed was two women in their early 30s behind the counter. And immediately, an obvious solution came to mind. These are probably either mothers or wanting to be mothers. So I ran up to the desk and I was like, I made this sound, this plea, and they were like, "Can we help you?" And I said, "You have to. This morning my wife went into labor, and I'm here, and this is just horrible." And they looked at me, and they looked at each other, and they said, "You have to get home now." I said, "Yes." And they looked at each other, and they smiled, and they fixed an upgrade to first class. And I even got a seat, next to the door, so I could leave the plane really quickly. And I thought that was that. The embarrassing part of this is, of course, I came into the plane, and after a while, the captain congratulated me. He seemed like a very nice guy, over the speaker, and the airline gave me 2 bottles of champagne. And of course, this got a lot of attention, so people started coming up to me and congratulating me and asking me about the child. And this was somewhat embarrassing because I had to sit there and lie for 90 minutes. And I would do so, but then I would immediately divert the attention onto the person. Well, do you have any kids? And blah 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 blah. And people were like, this is going to be okay, and everything. And when the plane landed, the stewardesses came up to me and said, "Well, what's happening? Have you called yet? Call her." And I was like, "Oh my God!" And I just said, "Oh, I can't deal with this. If something's happening there and I'm here, I just have to get. Well, do you have transportation?" They were so nice. So I felt bad, to some extent for doing it, but it was a lie where no one got hurt. They felt that they were doing a good job, and I wasn't ripping off a company. The airline was really the asshole. So I think that was an example of a ethical lie. Another example is I went to my high school reunion, and this was in the home of one of the my co-students, and they were saying that, well, we want you to speak to the partner to your left and ask that person what they've been doing for the last 2 decades, and then you tell that story. And I thought to myself, oh my God, this might be brutal. You'll hear all these stories. So I looked to the woman next to me, and said, are you as enthusiastic about that as I am? And she was like, yeah, my God, yes. I said, are you a good liar by any chance? And she said, yes, I actually am. I'm pretty good. So I said, are you up for a little prank? And she was like, sure. So we made this story that I had been to prison for quite a while, and that my life had essentially spun out of control. We were really vague about what this prison sentence was about, and that she, in her capacity in her job, was one of the people who had kind of helped me back to life afterwards, and as a result of that, we had kind of developed a friendship. And she told this story, and she was so damn good. I mean, she was scary good. She did it with a completely straight face, total congruence. And my job was, of course, to go into the emotional states congruent with her descriptions. Attempting to press some tears forward, and to have sighs of relief, and sadness, and so on and so forth. And you could see this magical moment where most of the people bought into it, where you could see the heads kind of nod, and where people accepted this story. Not everyone did. Some people never bought into it, but a solid percentage did. And afterwards, I pretended to be too upset, so I had to go for a walk, and she kind of went in the kitchen. And this was, of course, to evoke the gossip machine, so that people could start gossiping about what type of crime I had been doing. And people gave me hugs, and were completely. And when I exposed it, some people thought it was hysterically funny, and some people got really offended by it. And one person actually refused to believe that I was lying in the first place. He was like, "Come on, what was it? What did you actually do?" Now, is this hypnosis per se? No. So did we hypnotize them in that sense? No. But it's an example of being willing to make a claim where you risk being exposed as a liar, and to make it completely congruently, and being willing to take the humiliation, or the rejection. And I think this was also an ethical lie. People had a lot of fun with it. It became a fun story that people have shared. Uh, so my challenge for you is create an ethical lie where you don't hurt someone, and work on that congruence, and have fun with it, and your skills as a hypnotist will improve. Here's my final message. The astute observer, and anyone who knows a few things about self-deception and lying, knows that none of this is unique to hypnosis or hypnotists. You could say the exact same thing about the entire mental health and chronic pain industry. There's tons of self-deception, and there's tons of deception from the people in charge. Much of it is self-deception, but a lot of it is also direct deception. So till next time, see if you can come up with a really, really cool prank, and just enjoy the hell out of it.